Welcome to another episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? And welcome back if you've been a regular. I'm so glad that you've been following this series. It is so fun to do. I'm your host, Karen E. Osborne. If this is the first time you've been with us, I am the author of Getting It Right, Tangled Lies, and Murder Mystery that just won another award. Yay. And the upcoming Reckonings, which comes out in just a few weeks. And my guest today, I'm a host, my guest today is somebody really special. I will tell you all about it. So her name is Debi Tinsley, and she is a classically trained actor. She is a classically trained singer, and she now spends her professional time being a voice actor. How cool is that? She's going to tell us all about it. And that's actually how I met Debi, as I was searching for a voice actor for Reckonings. Debi rose to the top, and we're so glad. I'm so glad to be in partnership with her. So, Debi, tell us about how you got from actor to life to voice actor where you are now. What was that journey like?
You, as by your question, it was rather circuitous. So, I was a theater geek, in school and majored in theater and went to New York, pounded the pavement, did all the auditions, did summer stock, regional tours, and was there for about 10 years after I finished school, and then decided I wanted to have a family. And so I made the choice to put theater on the back burner and started my family. Fortunately, I'm also a singer. I sing jazz primarily. And so I was still able to do that while I was raising my child. And so I sang mostly for while he was growing up. But then when he graduated high school, I thought, okay, some of my responsibilities are diminishing, at least on a day-to-day basis. So I said, I'm going to go back and do some theater. So I was in LA at the time, and LA has a lot of wonderful small theater. And so I started doing that. And as I got closer and closer to retirement, I thought, well, why don't I ride out these next 5 years of work and start getting some on-camera training, get some voiceover training, which I had knocked at the voiceover door for several years, but with the day job, I just wasn't able to pursue it. So I had this 5-year plan. I was going to work, get some on-camera training, get my voiceover training, pick up some gigs along the way, and then I would segue into the new career when I retired. And then in March of 2020, I got laid off, and the next week the country shut down for COVID.
Yes.
So that 5-year plan became a 5-minute plan. And so I just said, this is the universe talking to me. It's telling me I'm done with the corporate world. So I dove into voiceover training like full time and thought I was going to do commercials and animation. But one day we had these workouts, and I just brought the book that I happened to be reading at the time and read from it. And my teacher said, you could go out and do audiobooks tomorrow. And so that's where I have, I still audition for commercials and animation and and video games and everything, but audiobooks is where I'm getting the most love. So, and that's where I feel most comfortable. I'm a storyteller, I'm an actor, and that's just really where I feel I'm at home.
Yeah, because it is more than just a good voice, isn't it? When one is
Absolutely.
doing voiceover, that actor part of you is essential in order to,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. You're creating characters. You have to, and it's different than when you're acting on stage because when you're on stage, you're creating one character. When you're doing an audiobook, unless it's a full cast narration, which exists, but
Mhm.
when you're the sole narrator, you're creating all of the characters.
Yeah,
So
you're the
yeah.
full cast. Yes, indeed. So, tell us about the process for making an audiobook. What does that entail besides
Um,
talent?
so the first thing, and it seems that might be obvious, but you read the book. And so many people ask me, well, do you just take the book and go into the booth and start reading it? I was like, no, because I'm leading the listener through the story. I'm guiding the listener. I have to know what's coming up because I have to know where the tension needs to build. And so, just like an actor on stage has information that the audience doesn't have, the narrator has information that the audience, that the listener doesn't have. So that's the first thing. While I'm reading, I take notes of all the characters. I list all the characters and I jot down anything that the narrator, that the author, or that other characters have said about that particular character. So that informs how I'm going to voice them. I think one character from Reckonings you describe as a black Q-tip, and I just like that was, and it's just so funny. It made me laugh. I said, "Well, that's gonna do something with the voice." So that's what I do. I list all the characters, and then the last thing I do before I sit down and record is for the main characters, I do a little voice reference because you may have a character that appears on page 25 but doesn't appear again until page 150. And so I want to remember how I did that. So for a lot of the main characters, not for the incidental ones that have one or two lines, but for somebody that's going to reoccur during the book, I do a voice reference. So I have that on file in case I have to reference it later on. So that's pretty, and words, that's the other thing. I look up any words that I might need definitions for or pronunciations. I was moderating a panel of narrators the other day, and one of the narrators said, "If you haven't said the word out loud, look it up, because you may have read it, you may know what it means, but if you've never said the word out loud, you may be pronouncing it incorrectly in your head.
Mhm.
So look it up." So that's the process before I go in. That's everything before I go into the booth.
I remember that's so funny that you said that because there really are words that you read that you don't use in life. And I remember being a teenager and this lady that lived upstairs from my best friend, and she was from South Africa, and she had never heard the word picturesque pronounced. And
Mm-hmm.
so she said, "Oh, it was so picturesque." And I'm like, what? But she's an intelligent woman and she just never heard the word. So that makes so much sense. I also love the idea that you put references, voice references, because I wondered how you keep from getting confused. Like, how did I make this woman sound versus this woman sound? So that's really interesting. So then you finish the book, you're all finished. And then what happens?
So then I don't engineer. Some narrators engineer. I don't engineer. So I send all the files, and you do a chapter. Each chapter is a new file. So I
Mm.
send it all to my engineer, and he runs it through a program called Positron. And that's a wonderful AI program that basically I send them the PDF of the manuscript and the files, and it goes through and it picks up any misreads. And
Wow.
yeah, it proofs it. They also put in a human proofer, but this does a proofing. And so my engineer then sends me a pickup packet. And so that is everything that I've misread, and it gives me the text of what I misread. It also gives me an audio reference of what I said before so that I can match the cadence of what I said. So when he drops that new file in, that new recording in, it doesn't sound like it just kind of dropped in from outer space. It sounds like
Does
it
it
just
flow?
continue, it flows. Exactly. So
Yeah.
that's how it, so that it, the corrections, and then I send it back to him. He masters it because Audible requires certain things that are beyond
Yeah.
my understanding, and so he masters it so that it meets Audible requirements. And then I send either the author uploads it to Audible or the publisher uploads it, and then it gets approved, and then it's on the site.
And then it's there. Wow. That is just so cool. So many people have said to me, they said, "Karen, you have such a great voice. Why don't you just read your book yourself?" And I said, this is not just about having a great voice. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for the compliment. But there's a whole lot more to this than just having a good voice. Yeah. So one of the things that the way that we chose you, which was so fun. I wanted to share this with all of you. So we had about five voice actors like Debbie send us a audition tape, and it was the reading of the first chapter of the book. And then I got all my beta readers. I have beta readers in Australia. I have beta readers in California. We had to find a time because they're 14 hours ahead of us that we all could be on. And then we listened to each voice, each reading, and then we discussed it, sort of like a book club. What did you think? And Debbie rose to the top. My beta readers love, love, love her. So, but then we started working together after I contacted you. So tell me about your approach to working with your authors. You gave me the technical side, but what's the human side of doing an audiobook?
Well, I recognize when I'm working with an independent author that this is their baby. And so I benefit from their insight. As an actor, you create what's called, you have to read between the lines. You create what's called subtext.
Mm,
And a lot of times, if you're just working with a script and you don't have the author or the playwright to speak with, you create your own subtext. But I'm grateful for that inside information that an author has. So we talked about it beforehand, and some insight into the main character that you gave me. Um, and one of the things that I did was there were some main characters that were not in that first chapter. And I
yes.
thought it was important that you hear how I voiced them, make sure that we were on the same page. So I did little snippets of each of those characters and sent them to you for approval, just to make sure that, I didn't want you to listen to the whole book and say, that's not at all how I heard her speaking. So and so that's basically, we had a meeting, and that's what I do. We have a meeting and we get an overall understanding of the book. And
Mhm.
if I have questions, if I have why did this character do this, I ask that kind of stuff beforehand. It's something that I don't have the benefit of if I'm working just for a publisher, because you don't talk to the author generally when you're working for the publisher. You just have a director sometimes, or sometimes they just send you the manuscript and you're on your own and you have to make up your own stuff.
Yeah. So this was really special because you are working for my publisher. In
Mhm.
fact,
Right,
it's my
right.
publisher,
Yeah.
but this is Black Rose Writing and the amazing Reagan Roge.
Mhm.
And he said, Karen, if you want to find your own narrator, that's okay with me as long as she's willing to work with me.
Mhm.
And so that was like the most exciting because I do know of people who, they just had no say.
Really.
And one of my colleagues, writing colleagues, said to me that he hates his audiobook.
Oh, that's
And
too bad.
isn't that sad? He says that it just didn't have any of the flavor, any of the subtext, any of all the wonderful things you said. So I am so grateful that we were able to collaborate. That is just awesome. So tell
Absolutely.
us about the most difficult or fun
Yeah.
voice you've ever had to voice.
Well, it was actually four voices, and it wasn't difficult. It was fun. It was a book I did that had four women in it, and it was a mother and her three daughters, and they
Mm,
were from Alabama. And so obviously I had to do the Southern accent, but they all had such different personalities, and the age difference, of course, between the mother and the three daughters. But I wanted to create their different personalities in their voice, but I also wanted to sound as if they were coming from the same family. Because you know how you speak to
mm,
people in the same family and they have certain cadences that are the same, or
yes.
certain, so I wanted to make sure that it was apparent that they were the same family. So the mother was a piece of work, and she was not a nice woman, and I placed her really low, and I put her down here. And then the older daughter, who was a chip off the old block, she was going to grow into her mother. I gave her a little bit higher, but I gave her the same cadence that her mother had, and she had the same
Mm,
kind of directness that her mother had. Um, then there was the middle daughter, and she was the main character, and she was the one that had broken away from the family and had more education. So I put her more in my natural speaking voice, and I gave her a little more refinement than her sisters had. And then the younger one was kind of a ditz, and she was always frazzled. And so I put her a little higher, and had her speak a little more quickly. And the most fun thing, there was a tea party among the four of them. and it was where it was a mystery, and it was a murder mystery, and it was where a lot of stuff was revealed in this scene, and a lot of anger, a lot of hurt. So it was just so fun flipping between the four of them, and they were getting more and more angry. And it's like I was a little schizophrenic, but that was just it was just so much fun playing with those four ladies.
Sounds awesome. I love that. I love that example. That was awesome. When you were doing Reckonings, what was the most challenging voice that you had to do for Reckonings?
It wasn't necessarily a voice that was challenging. It was, and this is kind of across the board, the emotional scenes. I
Mhm.
I love doing emotional scenes. I'm an actor. I love doing emotional scenes. That's why I'm an actor. You know? But on stage, you don't have to consider how loud you're being, or if your voice is pitching too high or whatever. In this, and also you're that only that character. I had scenes where an actor was crying, but then the narrator would step in and the narrator's not crying. So I go to a
Mm.
place for that character, but then I have to step back and be the narrator and then go back into the character who's upset or crying or mad or whatever.
Mm.
So that's always a challenge. And just from a technical aspect, when someone is angry and they raise their voice, you have to worry about clipping, which is when your voice gets too loud and it gets distorted. So I want to be loud. I want to get angry, but I can't get into the red zone in my WAV file because then it's going to clip and it's going to be distorted. So that's always the emotional scenes are always the challenge. They're the most fun. I love diving in, but they're the most challenging.
Wow. Wow. This is so interesting. Thank you for sharing all of this. So this is called What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? And I know you have to read so many books for your work, for your professionally, you have to read lots of books. But do you get a chance to read for fun, just for enjoyment? And if so, can you share something with our audience?
Or I don't read a lot for pleasure, unfortunately. But my go-to are mysteries. I'm a mystery thriller. I love legal mysteries. I've read everything John Grisham ever wrote. But that's my go-to if I'm just gonna, or a cozy mystery. Those are fun. Um,
Hmm.
I also love, because as I mentioned, I am a jazz singer, and I really admire the jazz singers that came before me. And so there are so many memoirs and biographies of female jazz artists and actresses, especially of Black Hollywood, that I'd love to read. I just finished a Dorothy Dandridge autobiography, which is just heartbreaking,
Mm.
absolutely
Mm.
heartbreaking. And I'm trying to do the audiobook. There's no audiobook for it. So I'm
She's
pitching myself.
available
She's available.
and
I'm
awesome.
pitching. And we were both from Cleveland. It's a natural. So
Yes, yes, this could happen.
yeah.
This could absolutely happen. Well, I want to thank you so much, Debbie, for coming on. I thank you so much for being my voice actor. I'm so thrilled and happy. And I thank all of you for joining us on whatever platform you're watching this on, whether you're watching it on my Facebook author page or on my YouTube channel, or if you found me on Twitter and clicked over, wherever you are, I ask that you follow me or like me, whichever is the right way to be a part of it. And certainly to subscribe to my website, KarenEosborne.com. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing you next time. What are you reading? What are you writing? Bye, everybody.